If you've ever opened up a weather app and seen a dozen different models pointing in a dozen different directions and just felt overwhelmed, this series is for you. Most people use PredictWind to look at the pretty maps, but they aren't actually making decisions because they don't know where to find the data. And even if they do, they don't know what to do with it. I've realized there's a massive gap between knowing the features and using them to stay safe. That's why I've put this series together, to fill that gap with something low noise and high value that you can actually use. Over the next 5 videos, I'm going to give you 3 questions that turn all of that overwhelming data into a clear plan. I guarantee you that by the end of this 5-video series, you are going to have a professional level understanding of how this program is built and how it works. And once you understand the why behind the weather, all that mystery disappears. Before we dive into the data, I have some really cool news. I've officially partnered with PredictWind to bring you guys a serious advantage. If you own or buy a copy of my book, you now get an exclusive 20% discount on PredictWind. And if you're going to get a pro package, that's $100 savings. So not only is the book free, you get to save a little bit in your pocket, probably to spend on your boat. Check the link in the description to take advantage of that. Now let's start with the foundation, the 3 questions that every captain must ask themselves before they even open the program. Hello, and welcome to your Introduction to PredictWind. My name is James Evenson. I'm a sailing educator, author, and offshore sailor, and I use PredictWind multiple times a day while on passage. I'm not a paid actor. I've actually been using this software for the better part of the last 80,000 miles, and my goal here with this series is simple. I want to make sure you actually understand how to use the software. In my opinion, modern weather routing has been the single most important development in offshore sailing in the 21st century. Think about that for a minute. Human beings have been sailing for thousands of years, and never before have we been able to predict the future of weather like we can today. Now, when you first open up PredictWind, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot going on, and that's normal. So we're going to break this down into 5 short videos. And today, we're starting on the foundation. How to think about PredictWind, how to set it up properly, and how to use it to choose the right time to leave the dock. Before we click anything, I want to give you one big idea to hold on to. PredictWind is not just a weather app. It takes global forecast and applies it directly to your boat, your speed, your draft, your comfort limits. If you set it up correctly, it stops being weather information and starts becoming decision support. But everything downstream only works if the foundation is right. So before we start routing or comparing models, I want to give you a simple mental framework that will keep you oriented inside the program. Every weather decision, everyone, comes down to 3 questions. The first question is, what's happening? What does the weather actually look like right now? And what do the models say it's going to do over the next few days? The second question is, what should my boat do? Given that forecast, how should this specific boat move through that weather? And the third question is, how is the plan holding up? Once we've left the dock, are things unfolding the way we expected? Is there traffic in the way? Are there alerts I should be aware of? Can other people see where I am? PredictWind is built around these 3 questions. If you always know which one you're trying to answer, you'll never feel lost in the interface. Let's start with the first question. What's happening? This is where you're looking at raw weather. Global forecast models, high-resolution local models, maps and tables. This is the big picture. Where systems are, how they're moving, and how confident the forecast is. Below that, you have observations. This is real data. Actual wind sensors, radar, satellite imagery, lightning data. This is like having access to the same tools a meteorologist would use for a local TV station, except now they're in your pocket offshore. And then there's local knowledge. This is information about the places you're going, marina details, passage notes, anchoring information, and reports from other sailors. All of that helps answer the question, what's happening out there? Now we move on to the second question. What should my boat do about it? This is really where PredictWind separates itself. Weather routing takes the forecast and applies it to your boat based on how you actually move through the water. You choose a starting point, a destination, and a departure time, and PredictWind calculates a recommended route for each weather model. Departure planning answers a slightly different, but equally as important question. When do we leave? What happens if we leave in 12 hours? What if we wait until tomorrow? What about the day after that? We're going to spend some real time here today because this is one of the most important tools of the entire program. The third question is, how is the plan holding up? This is where tracking, alerts, AIS data, and long-range climate information come into play. In my opinion, this is one of the most powerful parts of PredictWind, and we're going to dedicate an entire video to this later in the series. For now, I just want you to understand how the pieces fit together. What's happening? What should my boat do about it? And how is the plan holding up? Now let's talk about setup, because this is where people quietly get themselves into trouble. Your polars are basically your boat's fingerprint. They describe how fast you sail at different wind speeds and wind angles. If your polars are wrong, the routing will be wrong. And that error compounds over time. If the software thinks you average 7 knots and you actually average 5 knots, a few days from now, it's going to put you in the wrong place on the ocean. And that's how people end up in weather they weren't expecting. Using the built-in boat library is a great starting point. If your exact boat isn't listed, choose something similar and you can refine it later. For you cruising sailors out there, I recommend keeping this really simple. Adjust your speed settings to account for reefing at night and slowing down upwind, because that's what real boats do. Wave polars are important. They model how your boat slows down as waves increase, and how that slowdown changes depending on your angle to the waves. If you sail where there are waves, you want this enabled. Enter realistic motoring speeds, and be conservative with depth avoidance. This one gets people into trouble as well. If you set this too shallow, the routing software will happily take you right up to that limit, and people tend to follow that purple line without questioning it. So if you have green crew on your boat and they're following that line, they might get a little too close for comfort. I keep mine set at 20 meters. Before we move on, there's one more piece of the setup puzzle that's worth talking about, and it's one of the most powerful tools that PredictWind offers. This is called a data hub. If your polars are your boat's theoretical performance, then the data hub is your boat's actual performance. This is where PredictWind starts learning how your boat really moves through the water. If you have onboard instruments feeding data into PredictWind, the speed, heading, wind, GPS, the data hub records all that information over time and sends it back to the algorithm. And that matters, because no cruising boat sails exactly like its published polar. The bottom gets dirty, sails age, people load boats differently, people reef earlier or later than designers expect. The data hub captures all of that. Over time, PredictWind can compare your real-world performance against the assumed polar and show you where the software is being optimistic or pessimistic, and this is incredibly valuable offshore. It means that the routing isn't just based on a generic boat that looks a lot like yours. It's increasingly based on your actual boat and how you actually sail it. Instead of guessing how fast you sail in certain conditions, you can see it. And that improves everything downstream: the routing accuracy, the estimated time of arrival reliability, and comfort predictions. You don't have to have one of these, but if you're serious about offshore sailing and you're using PredictWind regularly, having a data hub is one of the smartest long-term moves you can make. It's one of those quiet tools that doesn't look flashy, but dramatically improves the quality of the decisions you're making. Once that's done, you're ready to start routing. But before we do that, we need to talk about how to think about the weather itself. You're going to hear me use the word model a lot. A weather model is a massive computer simulation of the atmosphere. It takes current data, the pressure, wind, temperature, from thousands of sources, and runs the physics forward in time. As compute power has increased, these models have gotten better and better. And there isn't just one. PredictWind lets you compare multiple models side by side and even ranks them by recent accuracy. And that ranking is very important. Past performance doesn't guarantee the future, but it does tell you which opinions have been worth listening to recently. Here's the key thing I want you to understand. Weather is about patterns, not numbers. Wind speed will change. Wave height will change. What matters is structure. Where is the pressure? How fast is it moving? Where is the wind being accelerated or blocked? That's why these global models are so valuable. They show you the big picture. And once you get closer to land, the high-resolution models become critical as well. Headlands accelerate wind. Islands cast wind shadows. Swell wraps and bends and stacks and refracts. Waves are the real story offshore. Wind is uncomfortable, but waves break boats and people. A secondary swell from a distant storm can turn a perfectly reasonable wind forecast into a miserable passage. That is why comparison matters. You're not asking which model is right. You're asking whether they agree and whether the pattern makes sense. Now we get to the payoff. Departure planning. This is where all of that setup turns into an actual decision. When do we leave? Instead of guessing, you can compare multiple departure times across multiple models using your actual boat data and make an informed decision. And this is where I want you to shift your mindset a bit. Most people fixate on that route line, but the line is just a picture. The real information lives in the data. This is where you compare wind, waves, roll, comfort, and vertical acceleration. And vertical acceleration is one of the best predictors of fatigue, seasickness, and broken gear. This is where captains make real decisions. Maybe one departure is faster, but another is significantly more comfortable. That's not a technical decision. That's a leadership decision. And this isn't just something you do before you leave. I rerun departure planning offshore all the time, just to sanity check what's changed and to see how my options are evolving. I know this may sound counterintuitive to some of you, but if you're 500 miles out and a nasty front is developing in front of you, running a new departure plan with 6 or 12-hour spacing is incredibly powerful. It instantly shows you if slowing down or even heaving to for half a day allows a system to pass so you can slide into a much smoother window behind it. So that's the foundation. How to think about PredictWind, how to set up your boat properly, and how to choose a departure window with intention. In the next video, we're getting into real-world weather routing. We'll break down the different models. We'll talk about the multi-model approach and show you how to combine navigation and weather to set your crew up for success. I'll see you there.